Hello and welcome to my country garden. Sorry about the difficult contrast here. We've got some sun this evening, so I'm out here making the most of it. So here's a question for you. Do you grow the same things year on year? Or do you change things up a bit and sometimes grow a different type of fruit or veg, or indeed a different variety? Well, that's one of the questions I posed some fellow YouTubers. And I asked them if they have grown something new this year, is it something that they'll grow again? Now, before we take a look at their responses, I thought I would answer the question myself. Now, I've grown carrots for many years now, but this year I grew a different variety, and the variety is called Sweet Candle. So I was really blown away by the Sweet Candle carrots, to be honest. I grew them in this raised bed here, which is quite a deep raised bed, but it's only about half full of compost and soil. I sowed them in March and started harvesting in July. I didn't have to thin them out really, I just harvested some carrots early to give the others a little bit of space. Now, the carrots themselves are fairly uniform in size and shape, and they've got a blunt end, and as their name suggests, they are lovely and sweet. Now, you'll find actually that Sweet Candle carrots are used quite a lot by people who are showing, and actually I attended my first veg show just a couple of weeks ago and I got first place with my carrots. So yeah, I can't really praise them highly enough for showing as well as for eating. Hello. Hello there. Hello, Maisie. Hello. Bob. So there you have it. First time this year for Sweet Candle carrots, and I'll definitely be growing them again next year. Okay, now let's see what the other YouTubers have got to say about what they've grown for the first time.
Hello Mags, and welcome to the Farmyard Garden. Now, you have asked me, is there something that I have grown new this year that I am going to grow again? And I think I might have something for you. If I step inside the polytunnel, you can't help but notice these enormous things behind me. These are my Birdhouse gourds, and I wish that I could tell you how heavy they weigh, because they are actually really quite heavy. You can probably tell by how much this vine thing is straining above them to hold the weight. These are pretty much a novelty. It's quite funny that the one thing that I'm really excited to be growing for the first time, and I think I want to grow again, is again an inedible crop. The same thing happened last year. I was really excited to be growing the loofahs, which I have grown again this year. And these ones were later pollinated, so they are quite small, or rather they're only small in comparison to these ones which are growing here. If I move the leaves out of the way, these are the original ones that pollinated, and they are absolutely enormous. And they're not just called Birdhouse gourds because they look a bit like a birdhouse. That is actually what I'm going to be making out of them. They go through a pretty grim curing process where I think they go quite mouldy, and then eventually they turn into almost like wood and they go very brown. You drill a hole in them, they will naturally have hollowed out during that process. Obviously another little hole at the top to put some jute string through. And the idea is that people paint them. There's all manner of various decorations for these Birdhouse gourds, from just painting, varnishing, and they will last for up to 15 years, and they make excellent Christmas presents. And that's one of my goals for them this year, is to not only do some for myself to be in our garden for the birds, but is also to make them part of a Christmas present. And I'm so fascinated with how the plant looks that I already know that I want to grow them again next year, and I recommend everyone to give them a go. But I can't show you a finished article because obviously this is the first year that I've grown them. Anyway, Mags, thanks for inviting me to join your collaboration, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what everybody else is growing for the first time next year and seeing if there's any unusual seeds that I can put on my list for 2026. Take care. Bye.
When Max asked me if there was anything I've grown this year that I definitely will not be growing again, I knew exactly which plant I was going to choose because this year I decided that it was time to try some new varieties out on the allotment. Not only new varieties of species that I'd grown before, but completely new things to me. And this here thing next to me, this Aztec broccoli, seemed the way to go. Now, if you look at it, it's a beautifully healthy specimen. It had been recommended by quite a few other people on social media. And yeah, it was really, really easy to grow. So my thoughts were, why not? Let's just give it a go. And all was going well until I actually gave it a taste test. Now, you may have already seen this on one of my previous videos, but let's just show you what happened. I should be able to, if that is like broccoli, I should be able to just chomp into that and really enjoy it because I like raw broccoli, so here goes. Never know what to expect. Okay, so you can see it didn't go down too well. Not only though did I try it raw, but I also tried taking it home and wilting the leaves, which is what a lot of people said would work slightly better, but still, I don't know. Was it psychological? Did I just have it in my head that I didn't like it? But yeah, it didn't go down too well then either. So much as it is a beautiful plant, and yes, I would love to be able to say to you, please give this one a go, you're missing a treat. I think I'm going to draw a line under this one and just, yeah, I will not be growing it again. Thanks so much, Mags, for asking me to collaborate, and I look forward to seeing what else to avoid.
So Mags has asked me that one thing that I grew this year and I will be continuing to grow in future years. Now, usually I grow onions from sets and I also do overwintering onions. However, things are about to change. I'm changing my tactics regarding onions. Now, usually I'll do overwinter onions from September and October out in the garden, and then they will grow slowly then until the following year. And you usually get them about a month earlier than your usual summer onions. Now, in my climate, I tend to find that a lot of those onions that I have grown over winter by using sets tend to rot off or go to seed, and they end up with about 70% failures. Now, getting a 30% return doesn't seem efficient enough for using the garden beds. So this year I grew my onions, Ailsa Craig and Stuttgart Giant, from seed in January, and I have to say it was a complete success. By growing those onions from seed in January, I had a huge yield of onions harvested in July, and they were the biggest I've ever grown. So next year I will be doing the same thing by growing them from seed. Now, one of the reasons why onions from sets tend to bolt is because they are actually biennial. So that onion set has already grown in its first year, and then you're growing it again then in its second year. And then a lot of the time then, if it gets stressed out then by the environment, it will tell that onion then to start putting up a flower and then go to seed. So by starting those onions off from an actual seed in January, it'll all be grown in the first year, and I cannot tell you, they were the biggest onions I've ever grown. So for me to be growing them from sets over winter, it just wasn't efficient enough for me. I will try some more onions from sets in summer to grow in summer because the climate will be different. There will be less stress on those bulbs, and hopefully I will get success with those as well. But my main growing method for onions this year will be growing them from seed. Will I sow them a little bit earlier this year and maybe do it in December and try and get the crop a little bit earlier? We might do trials there, but my success this year was definitely onions.
There are always so many things I'm growing every year. lots and lots of staples that I've found over the years are just the perfect thing for me. But yeah, occasionally there's one or two things I find that I'll grow and then decide it's either I don't get enough from it to make it worth my while, it's not right for my garden, maybe it's too big, or it just doesn't like this environment. Sometimes I grow things and then discover I actually don't like them. There's all sorts of reasons. This year's no exception. I've got one plant that I've grown for the first time this year and very quickly realised it's just not for me. This little spot down the side of the greenhouse is called the bed of requirement. It's kind of a planter where things go that have no other home. This year, however, I broke the rules about that and I decided I was going to grow some broad beans. Now, I sowed the seeds in late winter to get a bit of an early start, started them off in the greenhouse, got them going and they were doing really well. Got them planted out here, 10 beans, beautifully spaced, it was fabulous. And the variety was the Sutton, which is a dwarf broad bean, so it meant they didn't need any kind of supports, it was going to be brilliant here. However, one really nasty frost, and of my 10 broad beans, only one survived. That was the beginning. It wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Because what I did next. So it was only the beginning because I sowed some more, and again, because I had done it early, I had lots of time. And I got them going, again, they were looking super strong, and this time I planted them out in the green stock planters, and they did brilliantly, super healthy, super vigorous. And it wasn't long before I started actually getting beans, which all sounds brilliant, but here's the thing. Yes, I was getting beans, I was getting harvests, but I wasn't getting much. And this is when sometimes I need to make these decisions. Getting a wee handful of bean pods here and there is fun, and it proved that I could grow them in the garden. It proved I could even grow them in the green stock because they were dwarf plants. But it wasn't really enough of a harvest to justify growing them. I mean, I didn't even have enough to make broad beans on toast, which was the thing I was all excited about doing when I grew them. So I had to make that really sort of harsh decision and say, they're not right for my garden. Unless I've got more space to grow more plants, there's not really much point in me doing them again. So they're off the list for this year, I'm afraid.
Hi Max, so I know you're wondering like what I've grown this year for the first time and what I won't be growing again, and I think it's a courgette for me. Growing them is actually not the trouble. I've been getting quite a few, but anytime they get to any kind of size, the slugs and the snails are eating them, and I've been on it with the slugs and the snails, like getting rid of them all the time. Like, I don't kill them, but I chuck them over the waste ground, over the fence, and still I come out and there's one eating again. So for me, it's the courgette, I'm afraid. Possibly pumpkins, although it's not the first time that I've grew pumpkins, but the first year I tried it, I didn't even hardly try and they were perfect. And apart from the fact they stayed green, but I had 5 quite big ones. And last year, was it the year before, and last year, and this year, yet again, nothing. So, first time growing courgettes, no, won't be growing them again. And have attempted with pumpkins before, and I'm not going to try again. Bye!
So, what crop has done the best for me this year? It's quite a difficult one actually, because most of the crops have done really well this year, but there's one particular crop that stands out to me the most that's done the best, I think, this year, and that is the Cobra French beans. It's a new variety which I'm growing this year. I've grown beans in the past, this is just a new variety, and it has been so prolific. I'm really impressed with how many beans we've got. I was picking massive baskets full of beans, too many, so I had to freeze quite a lot of them, and we'll enjoy those through the winter months because beans are quite good for freezing. I am definitely going to be growing the Cobra French beans again next year. The plants are coming to an end and they've stopped producing now, but The pods that are left on them, I'm going to leave them. I'm going to let them dry on the plant, and then I'm going to pick them off and save the beans for next year. I don't think I'm actually going to grow any other variety next year. It's going to be Cobra French beans only. It's a stringless variety. It doesn't really matter how big you let them get. You know, you can let them get really big and chunky and they're still stringless. Runner beans, they can be quite stringy, so I've sort of gone off runner beans, to be honest. I did grow some this year, but they just ended up being stringy. Sometimes I can't come down to the plot and they get left on the plant, they get too big and they go stringy. So that's one of the new varieties which I grew this year, Cobra French beans. I'd highly recommend growing them. They're a super prolific variety. If you're a lover of green beans, why not give them a go?
Well, good morning, Mags, and thank you for inviting me back to your channel. It is such a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you and to discuss one of the crops that I grew for the very first time this year. Now, for me, it was cabbage. Now, there is a bit of a backstory to this. So, I'm of a generation that grew up in the 60s to wartime parents, and my mother and grandmother, although they did all the main cooking, never really experimented. Now, it's probably quite unfair to say that, because during the war with the rationing there was a lot of experimenting going on, trying to substitute different foods to make up for the deficit. But my mother's and grandmother's cooking was always meat and 2 veg. It was never really very exotic. They certainly didn't use much in the way of herbs and spices, and I don't remember my mum ever using garlic or even knowing what garlic was as I was growing up. So my encounter with cabbage was a poor one. They would boil it to death and it would stink, and when it was served up it would just be a mush on the plate. And I remember school dinners, again they were very basic, meat and 2 veg, and the dinner ladies were really strict. And I remember Mrs. Dinner Lady would lean over you and make sure you were eating everything that was on your plate. So if her back was ever turned, it used to get flicked under the table. So that's where all my cabbage went. So this year I made a concerted effort that I was going to get over this aversion by growing my own, because as we all know, homegrown food tastes so much better than that you get in the supermarkets. So this year was an experiment and I grew calabash cabbages. So what was the outcome? Well, you may well ask. And the truth is, the experiment, as you would expect, transferred into the kitchen, and I tried several recipes in which the cabbage was not boiled once, and I absolutely love it. So would I grow it again? If I had an allotment, absolutely. But in my small garden, probably not. They took up far too much room. I only grew 4 calabash, and they were overcrowded. So I've overcome the aversion, but I won't be growing them again.
Well, I hope you found that as fascinating as I did. I've certainly got a few things that I've taken notes of for growing next year. I'd love to hear what you have had successes or failures with where it comes to things you've grown for the first time this year. Pop something in the comments, it would be great to hear. And I'd also love to hear if there's anything that you've seen in the videos that you're definitely going to plan to grow next year. I've put links to all of the YouTubers that have taken part in this in the description alongside this video, so have a look at their channels and you can see the other things that they've been doing this year in their gardens and their allotments. Well, I think that's me for now. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. And I will talk to you again very soon. Bye bye for now.